Okay, right. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so like I say, I've got just a very short presentation. So, the purpose of this session is to bring everybody up to speed on where we are, um, gather any additional ideas that people might have, and also open up any connections with any other topics that might come to mind. So this is essentially a progress review on the metrics initiative. Um, This is all part of the Connect to Change and bringing systems thinking to the UK built environment. Although it has a UK focus at the moment, I do really believe that there are lots of things that are coming out of this that will be useful elsewhere. Um, I was on a systems innovation event last night, so that's the SI network that's here, which Joss had ran, and he gave something which was the state of the nation in terms of systems innovation, and there were quite a few people there involved in systems change. Many of them working on environmental and infrastructure initiatives, um, and I think that again is another place where we can connect. I actually met Mark Enzer at an SI event a couple of years ago, and that's how I got involved in this. So in the connective, the system of initiatives, the two that I'm mostly focused on, well, with the two that I'm mostly focused on, and one of them is metrics. The other one is the framework, which is a publicly available specification for all of the best of our good stuff that we do in terms of systems approaches and methodologies. This is all part of one big system, and one element of the system which we're supporting at the moment, and you'll notice this is on the left hand side because this kind of represents a timeline as well. The systems review is one of the first things that takes place, and the systems review is evaluating the performance of the built environment and to identify gaps and improvements. And the work we've been doing on metrics is being used in the background to support that. Um, and as the reviews takes place and the frameworks we've been putting in place for the metrics are considered, we'll both get insight from the reviews, but we'll also get insight into how we can improve the metrics. Uh, Right. So, in terms of the metrics initiative, the purpose is to provide a practical, comparable, and evidence-led way to show whether and why systems approaches improve outcomes, value, and system performance across diverse built environment case studies. Because the case studies are in lots of different and different distinct domains in the built environment. You've got some which are more focused on let's say the environment itself and ecologies. You've got some which are focused on more social system orientated, and some are focused on the technical infrastructure. And of course, you've got things like power and rail, and one of the challenges of putting together something regarding metrics, which is cross-cutting, is it needs to be sufficiently transversal and abstract so that it goes across everything, but it also needs to be sufficiently specific so that you actually get something meaningful out of it. We're approaching this from two different directions, two complementary lenses. One is success factors, which Bruce has largely been leading, and people have been contributing to that. And this is essentially all about have we got the conditions, the enabling conditions that are present to support systems thinking and systems approaches on those initiatives. And then we have something which is more towards the outcome indicators, which take more of focus on what has changed and what value has been created. And both of these things together, we're looking at in terms of the review evidence. And from that we want to derive um, recommendations and insights which truly are cross-cutting in terms of this overall purpose. Understanding the value of systems approaches and what we need to ensure that systems approaches are able to succeed. So, we're going to compare the cases. We're going to be looking at the evidence of the outcomes and the value, trying to understand the reason why we've had these outcomes, testing the enablers in terms of the success factors, and supporting learning, and being able to make evidence-based decisions and recommendations. And we need to take into account, of course, that one set of key stakeholders will be treasury and governance bodies who are often looking at hard numbers rather than, let's say, some of the more abstract qualitative aspects. So that's kind of like the overall approach and the purpose and objectives. I thought it'd be useful to show a slide regarding the 14 systems review case studies which are ongoing. And I've said so far because there may still be a few that are added. So you'll see that there's quite a bit of diversity in all of these things. We've got water management, we've got a community-led initiative, we've got the Sutton Bridge, which is an historic swing bridge. We've got rebuilding nature, electricity transmission, Thames Estuary, which is looking at flood risk management planning, the Trans-Pennine upgrade, which is a major rail enhancement, restoring the cycle, so water infrastructure, catchment systems, again, a water management topic, the Oxcam growth corridor, which is a strategic corridor integrating housing, transport, and energy systems to support sustainable regional growth. We've got Crossrail, which is a London Railway project with new tunnels and stations and trains. There's a climate resistance demonstrator as part of a national programme looking at climate adaptation, Fens Reservoir, and the White Usk Transition Lab, which is looking at regional regeneration across the Wye and Usk. So you can see that there's quite a bit of diversity here across the landscape of these reviews, which is really encouraging. And some of these things are pretty big endeavours and initiatives. So on the success factors, we're looking at outcome. Are we clear on the outcome that we're expecting? So these are all of the enablers of being able to do system stuff successfully. Are the enablers in there for us to be successful in the ambition of applying a systems approach? So do we have systems capabilities? Is there a leverage focus? So what we know as systems people is that if you can find the right leverage point, then you can achieve big outcomes with lower levels of effort, for instance. Authorizing leadership. So are the leadership empowered? Is there alignment on incentives? Do we have mechanisms in place for good decisions? Adaptive learning. So as we go through the cycle of the system change, is there a mechanism for feedback and I don't know, steering the course, if you like? So these are all of the things that are covered in the work that Bruce has been doing, and I shared the most recent example for that with you all, and I know that Bruce is planning on doing another upgrade of the document towards the end of the systems reviews, based on feedback. The outcome oriented performance indicators have a different focus, as I've mentioned. We're looking at service performance, outcome improvement, whole life value, value for money, efficiency, waste reduction, um, being able to make predictions about the delivery in terms of timeliness, and our confidence in that. Integration improvement, so making connections and resolving some of the blockages and the boundaries across all of the silos and disciplines, um, bringing organizations together so that they're collaborating more effectively, and looking for systemic inefficiency reduction. So, are we gaining synergies? So this is what we've been dealing with in the outcome orientated performance indicators. And we have a mix of both native measures. So when we talk about that, we're talking about things that you can tangibly measure, like cost or carbon reduction or something, something which is measurable, tangible. Then we got review scores of 1 to 10, which is a simple, more subjective assessment. There's a confidence tag in terms of, I to what degree are you confident in the results that you're providing in terms of the evidence behind it, and then a simple green, white, red visual profile in terms of how good something is. So that's all covered in the in the outcome oriented performance indicators document. That's on issue. That's on version 9 now. What Bruce and I have also done with some support from Mark is we produced not just a framing document which describes the thinking behind these things and how they're constructed and what they look like, but we've also produced guidance for the study leads, which is more simple, which allows them to utilize these indicators. Just one more slide. So in terms of the review timeline, we're aiming for initial findings by towards the end of June, and then all of those findings are going into a review period, which ends in the middle of July, and then there'll be an overall consolidation of the case studies by the end of July. And then what I'm thinking in terms of a revision and publication of our various documents, I'm guessing that this will probably mature and be published in September timelines. And that's pretty much it so far. I just wanted to give you an update on where we are. We've not closed comments on either on any of the documents. They're still open for comment and improvement. And I think I'm very much appreciative of the iterative approach that we've been able to put in place with people commenting, because I think that has gradually led to a significant increase in the value and maturity of the documentation. So I'll open that up for comments now. So maybe you could raise if you could use the raise hand function on React, like Michelle has just done, or if you do have your camera on and just want to raise your hand, I'll also keep an eye out for that as well. So Michelle, do you want to go first?
Sure. There's just one thing that I'm noticing that's absent, which is communication with the public. I don't know if you want to add that or not, but
I think that's a valid point, Michelle, and I think it has been discussed in the steering group to some extent. I think in terms of all of those different initiatives, there does need to be something which is more about the wider social engagement. Yeah,
right, especially with the policy, once
yeah,
once they make policy, they have to justify it. So that has to be communicated.
yeah. Okay, thanks, Michelle. Andrew, I think you were next.
Great. Just wondering if you've had any feedback from users of the framework. I gathered the first few.
I haven't, which is why my hand's up. because I thought I was expecting some by now. We've done our absolute best to make it useful and usable, but you would normally expect some rough edges that needed to be off. So I am. I have had no feedback yet, and I'm all ears. Have you got any feedback, Andrew? I'll put my hand down because you've asked the question for me.
I've only received feedback via Mark, who has been really kind of pleased. He's very excited by the way in which it's been picked up and used. He says that the use of it has been helpful, informative, kind of it's building in the right direction. So I'm only able to offer
I'm not going
second-hand.
to apologise for it. It's the best bit of work that Mark and I, with help from many other people, including Liz and Gary, could do. But my experience, 40 years as an engineer, is that nothing is perfect first time. So anyway, let's listen, Andrew, and see what what we hear. I'll almost be disappointed if no one's got any where it can be improved.
Yeah, thank you. Brendan, let's go next.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a user as well as having been invited this, so a little bit of feedback. And my comment relates in part to what Michelle said around public, but actually it sits between that and item 4 on authorizing leadership, because you have a criteria around leadership, but what I would expect to see is something about engagement and endorsement across all system actors, not just the leaders. Because in the case studies I'm working on, for example, in the River Wye, which crosses from Wales into England, there's different types of chicken farmers, there's different types of environmentalists, and leadership isn't the solution because there isn't a single leader. That actually what we need is to represent, make sure that minority voices are kept, as well as the majority, and as well as those with power, who are the leaders. So I think there needs to be a little bit more on representation, not just leadership.
Gary, are we taking notes, or do you need me?
It's being recorded, so I'll put together a transcript of this.
I don't want to listen to the whole thing, so I'll write that down. And I don't want to be defensive, but before, just one challenge before we do that. What we've been very careful to try and to avoid as best as we can is putting into the success factors things that are actually to do with systems approaches, because it's not supposed to be measuring systems approaches. It's supposed to be measuring the precursors. So it's not about the health of the plant that you're planting. It's about the quality of the soil and the watering and the sun and so forth. And I would certainly regard stakeholder engagement as being part of a systems approach. I will nonetheless write the comment down.
Can I come back on that?
But yes, please.
So I think it all depends on your presuppositions around system control. If you're limited to thinking in terms of leaders control systems, then I think you can have an emphasis on leadership. If in addition we acknowledge that behavioral change is going to make fundamental difference to the way systems change, then I think there needs to be hopefully that will address your reflection where my comment related to process rather than outcome. Because I think if we kind of look at the outcome of of any intervention being kind of behavioral change rather than just investment or building something or so on, well, then I think maybe I'm mixing kind of too many words
Well,
up. But actually, I think it needs to be more about
okay.
what people do.
So I've written that down. I will take it to Mark. In the meantime, I would encourage you, and I hope I'm not speaking across the purpose of other people, and anyone else who thinks they've found a factor that's relevant to their case study that wasn't in the list, to include it in the write-up. But I ought to shut up and let.
Okay, thanks, Brendan and Bruce.
What?
Okay, Joanne. Hey
Hi,
there.
thank you very much. Yeah, I think maybe you've already spoken a bit to just an observation partway through, which was you asked about feedback from the case studies, but I didn't know what mechanism was in place for them to provide feedback, and if it would be useful to provide a structured mechanism for feedback at this point from those doing the case studies. But actually, my initial question was, I was just curious how many of the case studies are currently live, as in our active projects or initiatives, and how many are historic, if any,
Yeah,
and whether that matters.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that there is a mix. Yeah, I think they're all at least ongoing. I don't think any are in startup. That's what I believe. But yes, some of them are more historic, but not too historic. You know, they're relatively recent. I think that's my understanding. Unless anyone else would like to comment.
I think some are saying how things could be done in future as well.
Okay.
So some are kind of methodological or saying this could be done, as well as. But I think mostly
so there really is a mix.
They're ongoing projects. I'm not sure I've seen a huge amount of completed projects which describe the outcomes really concretely, because things on the ground really change. But I've been looking more on the water ones than some of the other infrastructure ones.
When they're reported, that might make a difference, of course, especially having that difference between stuff that is completed and stuff that isn't actually, is forward looking or more of a scenario based approach.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting about that is, if we were to do, for instance, the assessment of the success factors at the beginning, and then look again at the success factors in the middle or the end, and reflect on, were we right? Yeah. Were those things really in place? That would be quite informative as well. Thanks, Joanne. Julie, do you have something to say?
I do. It's more a question. And I apologize. I've sort of arrived late to the party, so to speak. And I may have missed a number of initial conversations in this process. So as we focus in on key performance indicators, and if impacting the system and making the system more efficient and putting change in the system, I guess my larger question is, do we have an ultimate goal? Because our current overall global system, it is really extractive, competitive. It doesn't consider equity. It's not designed for equity. Are we concerned with how these performance indicators are employed and by whom? And is that part of the process, measuring the overall well-being? And that's an innocent, honest question. So I'd love for an answer to that.
Very, very much it is. I mean, Andrew, do you have a comment on that?
Yes. So the recommendation to create this sort of system of indicators or metrics came out of a manifesto that was published last summer, Connect to Change. And the guiding principle of Connect to Change was the built environment is at the center of a whole heap of very big interconnected problems, which are kind of leading humanity, nature, the economy in a really undesirable direction. So can we steer in a better direction? I think overall the objective is to achieve, well, better outcomes for people and nature. in brackets the economy as well, which does involve making things ultimately non-extractive or less extractive, sustainably extractive. But you have to have some kind of big actors on board to achieve that. And in this case, the case studies are about building an evidence base to Treasury to build systems thinking into policy decision making, investment decisions, as a way of kind of pushing the built environment in that desirable direction. I'll stick a link to the manifesto into the chat. If you haven't seen it already, it's a good 5-minute read.
Well, given that communication, I feel like what Michelle brought in earlier is critical to this process. How are you communicating with communities and factoring that into the process?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Okay. Any other thoughts from people? Yeah. I mean, one of the things I wanted to broach with you is I'm guessing that at some point these materials will be published as part of the overall Connective initiative. And one of the things we found very helpful on the overall document was, the names of people who contributed and had signed up, and also the organisations that had contributed and signed up. Yeah, and I expect that we will end up doing something similar for these documents as well. So, hopefully you are all genuinely appreciative of the things that have been produced so far, and hopefully you would be willing to put your names and your organisations on these documents. So keep that in mind. Yeah. Anything else that anyone would like to bring up? Okay, Andrew.
Just further to that point, the good work you're doing, I think, will need to be communicated to industry more widely. The obvious way to do that is via a kind of publication and press release process, which we need to discuss. And I suspect that September is the right time to tee that up. So over the next 2-3 months, I think we should put together a communications plan and get it out as widely as possible. And there will be a role for organizations and individuals to kind of push it out. The more channels employed, the better.
Yeah. Bruce.
In commenting on early versions, I've been a bit puzzled by the fact that it might just be my perception that the cost of interventions seems to be somewhat in the background. You have got efficiencies, of course, but they're efficiencies of the system once it's been built. Now, that does matter. And it does matter even if you agree, as I do with Julie, that equity and other things are important as well as money. But money we spend unnecessarily on one intervention is money that's not available to spend on making other things better. So waste is in no one's interest, and there's a lot of it about in the built environment. But on the slides, it's not even obvious where it fits. Where does it fit?
I think I'll share the slides again. I think it is made explicit in the document. Maybe it needs to be made more explicit. I think I suspect that it's on delivery predictability. So deliverable predictability is not just about time, it's also about the cost and the resources that have been applied. So, have you met the time and cost commitments that you made in indicator 5? I think that's where it is.
Well, sorry, Gary, but that's only half of it. We may be able to get to a point in this country where we can say with great predictability that high-speed railways will cost us 10 times as much per kilometre as they do in Spain. That would be a considerable improvement on the current situation. But that would not necessarily be a good outcome. We might seek to drive the unit costs down. So, okay. But I don't want to start a long conversation. I'm still not comfortable with
Yeah,
this.
no, I'll make a note of that, Bruce, and see if we can make that more explicit.
Or maybe you should change the name, like unit cost or something.
Gary, sorry to interrupt on that point. What comes in under whole life value there in the green number 3? Because it's got a pound symbol in it. Does that pick up? Yeah.
Yeah. So so when we talk about value, it's value is essentially a relationship between benefits and costs.
Cost. Yeah.
Yeah. Across the whole life cycle. So not just during the cost of the implementation, but cost over the full life cycle.
The full whole life costing. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I think there's an element of it covered there. Yeah. Maybe, I mean, another thing that we could, I'm not sure if it's in there at the moment, but what we could in both documents is we could have a frequently asked questions section within the document that could help perhaps highlight some of these things and make it more clear if it's not clear enough. Yeah, but I do want us all to be comfortable with the content of the documents and also the usability of them. Yeah, and like you said, Bruce, when you do first off, it's never going to be completely right. It'll always be improved through use. John, I think you're next.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. One, do you have an envisioned system or process to coordinate and organize the change efforts associated with the metrics? And is that a necessarily understood system in order to be able to understand which metrics will actually be applicable or usable or implementable? One other question is in regard to metrics related to change in relationships between entities in all of the systems.
Yeah, so there's a couple of parts to that, I think. This isn't something that I've spent a lot of time looking at, but within the overall set of initiatives, there is envisaged a platform, and the intent is to facilitate knowledge sharing and collaboration and provide access to resources, develop an information platform with active communication, connect people to tools, methodologies, case studies, and guidance. So, that is something that I don't think has started yet, unless one of the other members of the team has had some involvement in that. But it is something that's going to come a little bit later in the overall life cycle. It's connected to framework and networking. I know where you're coming from John. I do suspect that at some point we're going to be integrating augmented intelligence in the assessment of our information and knowledge regarding all of the things that are going on in the UK built environment, because if we have that, that I think can help us to make better decisions. So the short answer is I don't know, but I think so.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Michelle.
Yeah, it's just a quick question. I think you spoke to it just now when you talked about a platform, but by the time it's published in September, you might want to have a mechanism for updating the information. So as soon as it's published, then that's sort of dead information, and as projects move, things change. So, and you want those feedback loops in order to adapt and to change your policy if you need to.
Yeah, yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is just the first tranche of case studies. I would really not be surprised if this is going to be a continuous thing that would happen on an annual basis. I really wouldn't be surprised about that.
Yeah,
Andrew.
you might be able to
sorry.
update in real time.
Yeah. Andrew, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks. This is getting down into the weeds, and it might actually be something that Brendan can respond to. Looking at indicator 1, service performance improvement, I'm just wondering whether it would be useful to weave nature into that as an explicit sort of area to which projects provide service. Brendan, probably you can answer that based on some of the projects that you're working on, possibly some of the ones which are already in the mix for this initial sort of case study list. Bottom left. There you go.
He's found it.
Found it. Sorry, which criteria?
Right. So this is looking at the outcome-oriented performance indicators document. And
okay, which number? The service performance.
So number 4, indicator guidance. Indicator 1, service performance improvement.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
I think in some cases that would be the case. That I think in particular, one of the drivers that people are working with is, I mean, in the case study I'm looking at, that if the ecological status of the river can be improved, then builders in Herefordshire will be allowed to continue development. There's been a moratorium on development in Herefordshire because the river's in such poor quality, and you can only address the water quality in the river by working, across infrastructure systems, including your wastewater system and the whole agricultural system, etc. So I think it's relevant, but what I wonder is whether at this level of indicator of this project, you want to be specifying what the indicators for every system are that you're looking at, or whether you want to know whether we've shifted the dial or not, regardless of what the case studies choose to put forward as their key indicators. Do you see what I mean? This may be the native measure that there may not. Nature may be a native measure relevant to some case studies, but not to others. But if it's a native indicator in a particular case study, then you want to catch it up, kind of as one of the generic ones. You want to pick it up that it's had the intended objectives of that system intervention.
Yeah, I brought it up simply because in Connected Change, nature was very deliberately addressed as an entity, so almost like the personhood of rivers. So, if you wanted to bring it in, the first line of indicator 1 would be quite a good score against this. Users, customers, operators, nature could live in that line.
Yeah, it is. So nature is very much intended to be a key aspect of this, a critical aspect of this, just as much as social or technological. Yeah. So if that needs to be emphasized in the document and the guidelines, then let's do that. It was intended to be explicit. If it's not explicit enough, then let's do some more about it.
No, that's very good. I used to have one
And
of those.
there's so much kind of cultural precedent that sort of marginalises nature. It probably, in my view, would be worth weaving it in more obviously.
Yeah, so metrics was intended to be integrated, John. Just technology goes across the whole, social goes across the whole, so does nature. That's the whole intent. Yeah. Brendan, did you want to say anything else, or
yes, I did. Yeah,
go ahead.
I did. So, well, you'll be pleased to hear that what's open on my computer, what I've been working on this afternoon, has indeed been a case study. And I feel the same as I did kind of when I was revising for exams. When you see the marking system or, writing an essay, then it's kind of game changing in terms of, well, you want to enable the examiner to give you as many points as you can. So my perception is there's still a little bit of a gap between this conversation and the conversation I was having yesterday with other people writing case studies. And one of the ways, my next task, once I've I've done a first kind of brain dump of my case study, but I need to go back and say, well, where is the examiner going to give me each kind of score? And I think, obviously what's going to be helpful for yourselves, as I don't know if you're the examining community or whoever it is, but you're writing the exam questions anyway, is to help the examinee answer the exam question. And, that's obviously been a slow process for those of us on the case study side of the fence to work out what they're actually asking us for here. And now that we've seen the score sheet, well, that's a light bulb moment for me. Today's the first time I've seen it. I've only missed one of the case study meetings. I've been quite involved in all of this. So maybe your slide deck needs to be sent round would be one thing. Another thing that I think would be very useful is if you were to look at what's coming back from the early case studies and see where we're understanding your exam question or where we're misunderstanding it. And in a sense, you could point out, you could just mark up where you're looking for each you could say, make sure indicator 6 is addressed in your in under heading 4 of the case study, because that's what I'm trying to do, is work out which indicator you want addressed in which part of the case study. And anyway, just to say that both sides of the bridge are trying to do the same thing when we want to meet in the middle.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback, Brendan. I suspect, and this is just my suspicion. I think that so that there's clearly an air gap between what we're doing and the case study leads. Yeah, there's not been enough connectivity, and I think the reason for that is deliberate. I think that the steering group have kept that air gap because we don't want to interfere with what the case study leads are doing. Yeah, because there's a perception, this is quite rightly a perception, that they're all very busy people, and we don't want to overload them with additional things to worry about. But I think actually the other side of the coin is that this stuff that we provided might actually be useful for them, and it might make their job easier. So I think that gap needs to be closed. Yeah.
I'll get to a draft.
I'll mention that to Mark. Maybe you could as well.
Yeah, I'll get a draft that's useful for yourself quicker on the basis of having attended this call and seen your slides.
Thanks, Brendan. Bruce.
I was just going to say, well, I mean, I'm certainly not an examiner. I'm helping Mark with one aspect of the guidance, so an examiner's assistant maybe. Yes, of course. If you need more guidance, somehow, Mark and Gary and I have to do that. I really, really hope that it's not the asymmetrical relationship between an examiner and an examinee. I think we're all hoping to learn, to pull learning from the experience. And as I did in your first question, I would say, Brendan, if you think the exam question is wrong, answer a different one, and then we'll sort it out at the end. Okay, I saw your.
Thanks. I didn't know it was going to do that. I like that one with them all going up. But yes, no, much appreciated, and the examinee analogy only goes so far. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else? Anyone? Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Just a quick comment. This idea about evaluation becoming a part of a learning process is something that the European Evaluation Society has taken very seriously recently. There's something called the Czech Declaration, I think, from 2019, that says that evaluation should not be an end product. It should really be a learning feedback loop. So, and of course, it should be a two-way street as well, because the people learning might say these indicators are actually going to be more useful for us than the ones that you've selected. So there has to be the feedback loop is really important, and that's part of the thinking of the European Evaluation Society at the moment.
Do you think that would be worth us taking a look at that?
Yeah, it's really short. It's called the Czech.
Could you maybe drop me the link to that, Michelle, in an email if you can find it?
I don't know if I can find it.
Okay.
But it's Czech Declaration Prague 2019 European Evaluation Society.
Okay.
You'll find it.
All right, I'll try and find it then.
And the evaluation system, they're quite active. They're having a big conference in Lille in October, and that's the way that they're thinking very strongly. So that, if you build that in, then that is in concord with how they're thinking about things.
Okay. Anything else anyone would like to add? Okay. All right. Well, thanks again for coming along. I do really appreciate it. Let's continue the conversations. I will try and set up another one of these maybe towards the end of July, maybe August. We will see. Yeah, but I'll keep in touch at least by email. And I'll let you know how things are developing. If I get any more comments, I'll keep releasing the documents. So thanks a lot for everybody for your help. And keep in touch. Have a nice weekend. All right, bye everyone.
You too. You too. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.